Hi guys, I'm Becky Baker. I am the Mission Kids Director, and I also have Taylor Hunt here, who's the student's pastor. And we just wanted to jump on here tonight to talk about what parenting looks like in this pandemic. So we brought in three amazing moms who are just going to share some of what they're learning and what their experiences are like in this season, and just some of their wisdom that they've picked up along the way. So they're all amazing. We have Lauren Carreras, who has littles, Jen Oakes, who has high schoolers, and Kayanna Campana, who also has littles, and is also an associate MFT. So she's got some experience in that for us as well. So ladies, I would love for you to share how old your kids are and what home life is like right now. And if you have a funny anecdote that would represent that well, that would be fantastic. So let's start with Jen.
Oh, okay. Hey, I'm Jen, and I have two kids. I have a 18-year-old who is a senior in high school, and then my son is 16 and he's a sophomore. And life for us right now. I mean, I was thinking like it's kind of an amusement park, like, fun every day, except for the roller coasters that are going up and down and up and down and making us want to puke and things like that. So, so that's really like the up and downs. Like every day is a little different for us. Some days feel like this is actually kind of fun and sweet. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, as a mom, I'm like so loving having my senior home a little bit longer, and having my kids around. They're actually really great to be around right now. It's like 4 adults in our house, so I'm excited to hear from Kayanna and Lauren, because I can just imagine what it'd be like to have littles home at a time like this. But I think for us, it's just like a roller coaster ride. Like some days are really fun and good and feel great, and then other days are really hard. Our highs feel high and our lows feel low. So it's kind of what we're in right now.
So if it's 4 adults at home, who's parenting who? Are you parenting them, or?
Great question, Taylor. I'm pretty sure that is also going up and down and switching around. We take turns. We take whoever's strong that day gets to be in charge.
That's awesome. Lauren, how about you guys?
Jen, that's the same as my house. Whoever's the strongest is in charge. Okay, so me and my husband, so my husband, so we have a ranch house, and he works in our bedroom because it's like the most soundproof if we close the door of the other rooms. And then I have my almost 2-year-old son, who is such a 2-year-old, and my 4-year-old daughter, who is so social, and is now directing all of that social energy towards me all day. And they're at this they're so cute. So it's like either like, this is so joyful, or it's, I think it's joyful, and I walk away for a minute and I come back and they're grabbing each other's markers, and Caleb is drawing on his face and Olivia is screaming, "Mom, he can't draw on his face!" And then he's saying, "Stop it!" and hitting her on the head repeatedly. It's like, I'm like, I thought we were doing a craft. I thought we were all okay. Okay, never mind. Let's change what we're doing right now. It is so loud, and I feel very affirmed that my husband can hear how loud it is most of the time from his room. Although we have to keep music on, because if Caleb, my son, can hear Daddy, he remembers he's in there, and he runs screaming to the door and starts crying and banging on the door like, "Hey, Daddy!" So my very social daughter wants to tell me everything that she's thinking, and so she won't talk to me unless I'm looking her in the eye. And so basically all day I'm holding or wrestling Caleb, who thinks love is climbing on my head. And then Olivia is looking at me going, "Excuse me, Mama, excuse me, Mama, excuse me, Mama. I'm trying to tell you something. Excuse me, Mama." And I'm like, "I'm listening to you, beautiful daughter." So that is just a very normal day in the Carreras house right now.
That sounds so fun. When you said the strongest lead, was that just between you and Tommy or everybody?
Oh, no. That's like Caleb is running the show, because he's the loudest. And he is so strong. You try to hold him down for a diaper change when he doesn't want it. Oh, man, you're going to lose. It gets really gross over here. So I know that a million parents can relate to this scenario.
Oh, that is incredible. How fun. Kayanna, what's going on over in your house?
Well, it's funny, as Lauren was talking, I was like, sounds just like my life. We have a very similar situation going on. It's my husband and I at home. He's an essential worker. He works in agriculture, so he is working part-time from home and then part-time out of his office and, fields and fun things like that. So when he's home, he's locked away, and we have the same thing going on, a lot of pounding on the door and wondering why daddy can't play. And in one sense with the kids, I have a 4-year-old boy and then a 10-month-old as well, which is wonderful because I've never felt more popular in my life before. It's great. It's, that's nice. And then also super exhausting because I am not only popular with the kids, but also my husband, who doesn't see anyone else either. So as soon as he's done with work, it's, "You gonna talk to me? We're gonna," and I'm like, "People, leave me alone, please. I just need a break." So, I could really relate to you, Jen, to the roller coaster. I think we're feeling that here as well. Some days are great. It's a lot of fun. We have a really busy house. My 4-year-old is very extroverted and energetic, so we're constantly on the go. And then by the end of the day, I'm ready to be in bed by 8 o'clock and be all done. So that's kind of what things are looking like for us. The other thing is sometimes it's a little sweet and sad. I don't know if anybody else uses Marco Polo, but a friend was pointing out the other day that every time my son sends a Marco Polo to them, he says, "Hey, do you want to come over? Can you come play with me?" And I realized going through them, he does that to everyone. Every person he sends a Marco Polo to is, "Can you come over? Can you come play with me?" And then it turned to, after lots of talking about what's going on, we call it the sickness in our home, which is probably sounds even sadder. So after the sickness is over, can you come to my house? So I hear that a lot, and then a lot of questions of why can't they come and play? Why can't we go here and all of that, which is sad for him. But we're getting through it. We got a lot of fun outdoor activities we've had to become creative with. So that's fun.
That's awesome. I have a nephew who's 4, and he was supposed to come out in May. And he said, "I can't come out because California has the sickness." I was like, "You're right. I think the whole world does, but that is true." Oh man. And it sounds like your kid's beating on the door. Sounds like what I'm doing to my wife daily. I'm like, "Daily, you want to play? Daily, can we do something?" "What? No." "Oh, okay. You want to stay in? That's fine. Cool. Let's read a book." "Nope, let's not do that. Let's go outside." But it's crazy. Man, well, we just love to talk a little bit just of how to parent in the midst of a pandemic, and how to, it's weird where I think a lot of parents, or for everybody, we're trying to figure out, how do I lead myself in this season? And then let alone leading a family, kids, helping them go through all the emotions that a pandemic brings. And so just want to talk about a bunch of different topics of that. But really even just want to start off like talking through how to help your kids and students like process this season, like process all of the changes that are happening. We feel it as parents and adults, not going to work and all these other things. But whatever it is, kids and students, like they feel it in pretty radical and dramatic ways too, that matter immensely to them. And so we just want to talk through how we can help them process some of that in the season. Really, I would love to hear some of this because I want to help learn how I can process some of this, but you can just talk to me like I'm 5 and that'll be really helpful, and I'll just apply it to me, which would be great. But I know, Becky, we were talking a little bit earlier, and you'd even heard about like some silent symptoms you can see in kids and students that can help identify that they're going through stuff in this season. And so I'd love even if you kind of want to touch on some of those.
Yeah. So kids learn a lot about how to verbalize their emotions and understand them and name them as they grow up. And adults do the same, because honestly, most of the time I'm not able to be like, this is exactly what I'm feeling and all the things. And so much less so kids, especially when they're younger. It can be so hard to know if they are stressed or if they're anxious, if they're feeling this, if they're not. It's hard to know what's going on in their brains when they're not able to express or articulate it in ways that make sense to us. And so I was just reading about some silent symptoms that can help you see, especially in younger kids who can't express this at all, just to see if they're feeling that and to kind of gauge that. So some ones that I was reading about was withdrawal. So if your kid is talking less, if they're like kind of hanging different in the space and kind of spending some more time alone, especially for the non-introverts, if they're spending some time alone, that should be like yellow flag. And so if they're more withdrawn than normal, that's something to lean into and pay attention to. Also, if there's trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, that usually says something's up. So just kind of, if bedtime gets harder, if falling asleep gets really difficult, if nap times are harder, all that stuff, that might be a flag that something's going on. If kids are eating differently and also have bathroom issues a little bit differently than normal, that is not so different than adults. I have digestive issues when I'm anxious, so kids too. That all still applies. So those are just some quick, easy things to kind of pay attention to and kind of gauge where your kid is at.
Becky told me those earlier, and I was like, are you following me around? What is
Yeah, we're not doing that, guys.
And also like, could you define bathroom issue? But we won't do that here because no one needs that. Yeah, I mean, I think those are great. Just looking for those in kids and students. I know even been talking to some parents, and it's like they won't leave their room. It's like that. I love even the term yellow flag. Like that might be a yellow flag. Like we want to make sure, check in on them and see how they're doing. I know Kayanna, you had come in and talked to some of our like mission students leaders earlier last semester. Just about how to like affirm emotions, because even I think sometimes as a parent it can feel that tension of like, I have lost my job, or we're like unstable financially, and all these big things are happening, and you're mad that you can't see your friends. Like it just doesn't feel like they weigh the same. And so even like how to kind of identify and affirm some of the emotions behind the things that our kids and students are feeling, to get to like the point that might seem valid behind some of that. So I'd love it if you wanted to talk a little bit about some of that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I love those symptoms. Those are helpful, Becky. I think kind of what you were saying, Taylor, that first off, in terms of talking about anyone's feelings and emotions, the first thing we have to recognize is that they're normal and we all have them. And so although maybe as adults, our problems feel so much bigger or anything like that, we have to realize whether they're little or they're getting bigger, they have the same feelings, and they're pent up in usually smaller bodies, and they don't have as many tools as most of us have to be able to manage them and deal with them. And so the first thing I would say to anyone is just stop and recognize that it's okay. So however they're trying to express what these emotions are, I mean, in my house, I feel like it tends to happen more so with boys, but girls absolutely as well. It comes up a lot more, I think, in terms of anger, and whether that's tantruming or things like that. And that's hard for any parent. It's when we have our own stuff going on, to stop and be like, great, now I have to deal with you melting down when I'm in the middle of my own meltdown. So if we first can stop ourselves and calm our bodies, then it's our job to go in and recognize whatever it is that our kid is trying to express, which, I mean, although this situation kind of sucks being in a global pandemic, we kind of have a head start in terms of that guessing game that a lot of parents have to go through to figure out, well, what is it that's really bothering you, right? And they might not be able to say like, well, it's, that the whole world is getting sick. It might be, something related to that though. It's, we can't go outside as much anymore, or yeah, I can't see my friends, or whatever it is. But those are all things that you're aware of. So even if they can't tell you, and they're in the middle of a tantrum, it might be in the moment about not getting the snack that they wanted. That's a big one in my house. But if we can stop and like let them know it's okay to be angry, right? And that that's normal. There might be a need for some correction later, like if the way that they're expressing that anger isn't helpful or harmful to themselves or someone else. But first stop and say, you're angry, I see that. that's okay, right? We got to identify whatever the emotion is. And then have a conversation about it. So it might need to be like, it's okay that you're angry, but it's not okay to express your anger. I'd like you to stop, and whatever alternative works for your family. And then you can kind of continue that conversation, and you can be like, it seems like you've been angry a lot lately. Can we talk about what this is about? Is it possibly, I've noticed, I mean, it's hard that you can't go out as much with your friends, or for my kids, they went to preschool. So is it hard that you're not going to school right now? Whatever it is, to start that conversation, because oftentimes they don't have, like you were saying, Becky, the words for that. And so as the parent, I mean, typically that's our job to kind of try to draw that out from them.
Can I jump in too and say that, like, but if you think about yourself, like just sitting down and having a one-on-one face-to-face conversation with someone when you're feeling all these emotions is very hard. It's hard for me. So I think the best conversations I've had with my daughter, or that I've had about my feelings with my husband so far, has been like, let's take a drive. We can still get in our cars and drive around, or let's take a walk, and while we're in the stroller, or let's play with Play-Doh, so that we're kind of doing something. And I feel like those are really the times where there's a little bit more safety to have those conversations, because we all know that we can't push them to talk to us, but we can really help them have a safe atmosphere to do that.
Totally. I was kind of thinking the same thing with students, middle school, high schoolers. Sometimes that tension where in the moment when they're mad, as a parent, it might not be great to be like, you're feeling angry, let's talk. Like they might be like, I don't want to talk right now, but almost giving them a space and a time to be like, hey, I think you're a little emotional right now. When's a good time that we could take a drive and just talk? Or when's the time that we could go on a walk and talk through some of this, and like give them a little bit of a time to prep mentally. And it shows that you care. And I think as parents, sometimes it's like, we want to care in the moment and want to help fix it. But sometimes just giving them a little bit of almost like a heads up, I think has been helpful. Or maybe that's not, I don't know, Jen, what about you for like having high schoolers? What has been some of that in your house? Or
Yeah, for sure. And I just like to say, we agreed to do this, the three of us, and we made it very clear that we were going to do this, and it was going to be known that we are not experts at parenting, okay, that we're trying to figure it out too. And so I just never heard that disclaimer said. So I'm just, you know, you're going to hear some things, you're going to be like, wow, why did they pick them for the panel? But it's fine.
Like, these are our experts.
Yeah, we're just in it, okay? So we're just telling you what we're seeing down here, and that's about all we got. So, and God's help. So, but yeah, I think that I heard someone say one time that if you want to get a man talking, then you take him for a walk or do a job next to him. And like, I found that true with my kids too at this age as a teenagers. Like, if I can, don't tell them this because it's my secret, but if I can go for a walk with them, have something about that where we're not like staring into each other's face. There's a little bit of fresh air around, the situation's diffused a little. We're able to like look straight ahead and kind of actually talk about what's really going on. I've had major breakthroughs with my kids just on a walk. So for sure that, and then even that work alongside one another in a project. It's sometimes how I can, especially get my son to chat with me. He's super creative and just loves to do stuff with his hands. So like, if I can get him to kind of come and help me with the project or do something together, that uses that, or while he's doing that, like he's an artist, so he'll be in his room drawing. That's actually a really good time for me to come and just like let him kind of talk while he's doing that. So probably equivalent of a toddler playing with Play-Doh or something like that. But I think it transcends to these years too, of like almost like there's a little bit of a distraction instead of like, we're going to sit down and have this heart to heart. But I wanted to say too, especially with teenagers, what I found, and for myself, is that piece you said, Kayanna, of like just really validating wherever they are. And I think sometimes we have emotions or we have these strong reactions or whatever, and don't really understand why. And then I think sometimes, I don't know about everybody, I know for me, sometimes I jump right to, do I deserve to have this feeling? Like, and then we start even in this season where there's like crazy stuff happening and people are dying or losing their jobs, and it's like a worldwide pandemic, and so sometimes my problems may feel sort of small. I think we have to watch for something Brene Brown calls comparative grief, where if my thing feels small compared to these big things, then it actually makes me feel kind of guilty for feeling any way that I feel, when the reality is we deserve to have whatever feeling we're having. That it just is. So like, let it be what it is. Let's talk about it. Let's hear about it. And I'm really quick with Brene Brown's comparative grief stuff. She talks about how there's really no shortage of empathy. So just because I have empathy for myself in this emotion and in this feeling doesn't mean that I'm not going to have enough empathy for the ER doctor that's having to go into work. Like, actually having empathy for myself in my feelings and emotions creates an ability, it actually recreates empathy. So I am actually better at having empathy for the ER doctor that's going into work. So this comparative grief thing right now is really important to like help our kids understand and help us understand, even when we're looking at our kids and going like, really, you're going to get all bent out of shape because you can't do that thing, or you can't have the snack, or you can't go play with your friend, or whatever it is. But really, it's very real to them. And so we just have to meet them kind of in that emotion, validate what it is, because it is what it is. And then help them try to dig out underneath, like, what is that under there and how can we get to it?
Oh, that's great. I know, like, Kayanna, whenever she came and talked to our mission students leaders, had brought in some like a feelings chart and a feelings wheel. And I was like, this is amazing, because I don't even know how to identify all of this stuff. Boom, which is so helpful. I like took it and was like, I'm going to use this all the time. And all of our student leaders were like making fun of me. But I'm like, hey, you know
Just
what?
slide it in front of Daily and you're like, how are you feeling today?
That's right. I'm like, how are you? I am feeling. You look at the chart. I am feeling anger. Nope, not anger, but maybe anger. I don't know. But so even we've got a resource page that we'll put some of that chart on, and even a link to some of the comparative grief stuff is on that resource page. So you can find that in the comments below. But that is so good, and I love the doing something with, especially with students. I am curious though, because I just did a 2,000-piece puzzle with Daly, and then she had us make some side tables. So did you talk to Daly, Jen? Because what is happening? But anyways, whatever. It's
not confirm or deny.
I cannot confirm or deny. She's treating me like a toddler, but I probably deserve it. Okay, so I love too, like, I know it's just a big thing in this season of mental health and anxiety, and I think everybody's feeling anxious and cooped up. But there's a ton of, just all of us that deal with like mental health, anxiety, depression, but especially in students, man, it just feels like that is running rampant. And so I know even in this season, it just feels harder of how can we help as parents come alongside of our students who maybe are dealing with some of this or struggling with it. The routines that they had that maybe normally gave them a good lift or a boost are all out of whack now. So if any of you guys want to talk through some of that, Kayanna, maybe just how we can help our kids and students who are dealing with some mental health, anxiety, depression in this season.
Well, I'll get to practical stuff in a minute, but I feel like a summary, kind of what all of you guys were just saying, would be really helpful, because you guys identified already like the best general coping tips that we could have, right? And the first one would be a sense of safety. I think that's huge. So for anyone to feel safe enough to be able to just sit down and begin to look at what's happening in their lives and in their body and whatever, is huge. So however, we need to get to that place. That's what we should be a priority, right? We all know ourselves the best, so we know what we need generally. And then if our kids are old enough, they can maybe tell us, we can kind of inquire, well, what is it that would help you kind of feel comfortable, feel safe, feel calm. Ideally, you probably already know some of those things, especially for your younger kids, in terms of promoting that. And then once we feel safe, all of us, it's much easier to get to a place of feeling calm. And whether that's just mentally calming down the chaos in our brains, and also physically. And that's a huge piece, because in any times of anxiety and stress, our body changes. So you mentioned earlier, Becky, in terms of some of those silent symptoms, and that sometimes when you're anxious, you feel it in your stomach, right? And that's actually a physiological response to stress, right? And so we have these things happening all the time, and we don't always connect the dots that like whatever is going on in our head or whatever we're feeling is actually impacting our body, right? And so when we can figure out how to calm our body, and there are great tips, and I can put some stuff on the resource page about things to do to help calm. But that would need to be a top priority. And then once we have that, you mentioned like doing stuff together, right? That self-agency, when we use our hands, doing crafts, activities, anything like that to kind of make us feel like we're in control, especially in times when we feel like we have no control, that's huge, right? So whatever we can do for ourselves, for our children, we want to make sure that we're gaining that sense of control and agency in our life. And then that connectedness as well. Once we feel like we have some of that, we can calm, we feel like we have a little control of the situation, we all want to know that we're connected, which is hard in times like this when we can't connect with maybe all of our loved ones and close friends and all of that. So it might mean going above and beyond. So with your own children, and maybe they're not touchy-feely, so you have to figure out other ways that work for them. But I mean, actual physical touch is huge. Things like that, whether it's a lot more cuddling, just pat on the back, whatever it is, that helps kind of us feel that sense of connectedness and calm as well. So that's really big. In terms of actual tips, I'm sure you guys have some great ones too, but I think a huge one is just knowing that there are different types of coping. So there's things that we can do in terms of like physical self-care. We can do kind of emotional self-care and social and spiritual. And so different things work for different people. And yeah, you're going to have to probably change things and find new things that you weren't doing before, given our lives look different now. But I mean, big ones would be, making sure you're moving at points during the day and getting enough sleep. Emotional stuff would be kind of what we were all talking about. Social, finding ways to connect, Zoom, Marco Polo, things like that right now are really great for that. And then spiritual, which is, connecting, doing things like this to kind of hear like, okay, so what can I do to, have a greater impact? What would my faith how does that look like, and all of that. But I think you guys probably have great things to add to that as well. So I'm going to mute myself now.
Oh, that was so good. I was like writing that down. I'm like, okay, safety, calm. So yeah, like, yes, this is so good. Thank you, Kayanna. I love it. I think that piece is tricky right now. Especially the coping mechanisms and things that used to be red flags and measurements for us are all off. So that's one of the things I've been trying to help my kids see, like the things that you used to use, like maybe your grades, like that's usually like, how am I doing? Well, I have these grades that show me I'm doing my schoolwork and I'm following through. And, those are all wacky right now. Like, the way we're trying to do online school and all that stuff. And just some of the other things that we used to use as those measurements of like, I'm strong when I'm doing this, they're a little bit off. And so I think helping them in coping, trying to find new things to measure in this time has been helpful for us. And that thing you just mentioned of the physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental and intellectual, social, all those things. And Jim, and maybe we even can put this in the resource page, that Tommy and Jim's talk last Friday night was so helpful. I watched it twice because that replenishment cycle thing, and just trying to help my kids understand what does that look like now. And it may look different in 6 months when hopefully our lives are different again. But for now, what do you need right now in this season to make sure you're actually replenishing your soul, and you're not just like, accidentally going into, a hole. We call it the hole in our house. It's like, I'm going in the hole. That's a sign. And we tell each other that, literally, like, use that. We're like, hey, I'm going down in the hole. I need somebody to help me out, or else I'm going down. I may not get back up. So, so that measurement thing and coping, just knowing it's going to look different now, but still finding those things to hang on to I think is helpful for us.
I have a hard time listening to what like the world tells me as a young mom is going to fill me up. Okay, so I'm just moving the conversation along. So for my family, helping my kids cope, is kind of easy. Like, I mean, I need to meet their emotions, but for me, and affirm them. And that's something that's really easy for me to do, because every time they feel sad, I'm like, well, I don't care what it's about. I know what sad feels like right now. Great, let's be sad together. Like, come here, let's have a little cry, okay? All right. But moving past just affirming them and getting them outside and running around, and then they're great, and then they're like, I have daddy lunch, and I actually feel a little bit like a professional spin team. I don't know if you guys are Parks and Recs fans, where like, you know, Leslie's running for office and they're like two of the characters like have to take every news cycle and spin it and make it positive. Well, like that's a little bit of my job right now, and it's pretty easy for a 4-year-old to be like, oh, I'm so sad about Easter not being at Mission Church too. Like, oh, this is horrible. It's really sad. You know, we never get daddy home on Easter. Boom, her whole world is different. And I'm like, professional spin team, I did it. And then we're happy and we're good. And so I'm like, okay, coping for you with the little kids, it does feel pretty simple right now. So what does coping for me look like? And I think a lot of times I can buy into the lie that putting in my headphones when daddy comes out here and listening to Parks and Rec on my phone while I do the dishes is gonna fill me up, or is like me time. And it's not like I'm empty, and I desperately need to be living by the Spirit. And as I've gone like different weeks, you know, some weeks where I'm like TV screen time is like up here for me, and then the weeks where I like am plugging into podcasts where people are talking about living life with God, and I'm maybe really reading a prayer every day from a psalm, and I'm doing those things. Those are the weeks where I'm like, okay, this is hard, but God is giving me the strength I need. And I think coping, there's a big lie that it's like coping for moms is bubble baths and chocolate and a good book, but what we all need is parent, and let's not knock those things at all. But what I really need is this idea that Romans says that we could live by the flesh and satisfy the flesh, but the flesh is only satisfied for like 20 minutes. Like, I don't actually feel better after I watch Parks and Rec. I could tell myself all day if that's the case. It's so not the case. But living by the Spirit gives us the Spirit. And so I've been really enjoying this time because I'm so needy. I'm in my own grief cycle every week, and I need to fill up myself with Jesus. And so listening to these things and connecting with God is great. That can sound and feel intimidating. But one of this amazing podcasts that I listened to last week, which I would love to put on the resource page, is called Risen Motherhood. It's not prescriptive. It's not telling you how to be a mom and what methods to use to like clean up toys or discipline. It's like, how do you figure out what God says about these things, like in his word? And it's very open-ended, and they're just wonderful women. And they're interviewing someone about prayer. And I have never read this verse before. So parents, this is just awesome. Okay, so the Message version of the Bible is one I would highly recommend because it gets you. So ready for Romans 8:26. I just have to make sure I have the whole verse. Where is it? Okay, yeah. Okay. So meanwhile, the moment we get tired in the waiting, God's Spirit is right alongside helping us. If we don't know how or what to pray, it doesn't matter. The Bible says it doesn't matter. He does our praying in and for us, making prayer out of wordless sighs, our aching groans. He knows us far better than we know ourselves, knows our pregnant condition, literally, or maybe pregnant full of anger, grief, or like you want to punch someone, and keeps us present before God. That's why we can be so sure that every detail in our lives of love for God is worked into something good. So I have been learning that in my grief and in my inability to pray, I can direct that inability to God, and I can groan and sigh to Jesus, and he is praying for me. And so as far as like coping as parents, like it almost brings me to tears anytime I feel like someone is taking care of me. It's like this sigh of relief, because I feel like I'm keeping it all together, and I'm being the spin team, and I'm holding their emotions up, or sometimes, caring for my husband. And I just need to know that someone's looking out for me. And the fact that verse says that Jesus will just pray for me, like, Jesus, okay, I'll take it. So really for me, I'm learning so much about how do I fill my life with the Spirit, and just in that hour in the morning when life feels like it's just so freaking loud and it's not going to end, and can I go run and lock myself in the bathroom, which sometimes is very appropriate to do. I'm like, God, strength, help. Like, I don't want to scream right now. I don't want to lose it. And that's all I have to do, and paying attention. And he's really giving me the strength to get through that hour.
Yeah, I'm gonna just tag on that too. Like, I love that, and that doesn't change as your kids grow. But like that need and direction. Like, I can't tell you how many times a day I pray, like literally just be like, oh, help me. I have no idea what to do right now. I have no cool plan in place. And I will tell you, I love that you use that. That is hilarious and so true. You guys are professional spin teamers. Like, that is what you do when your kids are little. 100%. Defer and distract. That was my parenting style for so many years. Defer, distract. But I will tell you, it's harder with teenagers because they read right through it. You try to spin a positive spin on what's happening right now, and they're like, don't give me your substitute. Don't give me your positive spin. I am spinning out, and going downhill. But I will tell you, the solution is the same. I mean, there are so many things that we can do. But I think even Kayanna touched on it, like that stop piece in the middle of that moment, to be able to take a second and stop there and have everybody just all time stop, hold on a second. Let's just sit here for a second. Because usually when my kids are spinning out, it causes me to spin out, and then I'm no help to them, and so for me to be able to stop with them and really, like, now my kids are old enough that I learned, like the other night, Henry and I were talking, and I just was like, I think you need to pray about that. Like, I don't know what to tell you to do. I don't know. And to be able to have set that pattern from the time they were little, that's what we do and we don't know what to do, that now they're teenagers and that's still what we do and we don't know what to do. And it's not magical, and it's not like, like, oh, like all of a sudden. But I will tell you something about the Spirit of God leading your parenting in the moment. You do suddenly think of things that actually connect to the soul and the heart and what's really happening. You get sort of this thing. So even if you like don't even have a relationship with God, parenting is the perfect time to try to involve him and the Spirit into your life and be like, I'm going to just give it a shot and see if there is wisdom here in God's ways. And so, yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because that part, just the spin team changes a lot how that works. Sometimes it still works, and then it's like, yes, I did it. It's a real accomplishment. But for the most part, it's really just like, oh God, you got to help me figure this out.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love even like, there's so many different articles and blogs and 20 things to help your toddler and 10 things to help your teenager that are out that have some like maybe good advice or whatever. But to know, like, it's great to have some practical wisdom and to have some practical advice, but that only goes so far. And that's where like God's Spirit gets to come in and even in the moment help apply some principles in some ways that maybe you haven't thought of or didn't realize, or that your kids might need in that moment. And so, man, some of the blogs and stuff that have been mentioned, make sure you check out the resource page, because all those are going to be on there. And you can find some more of that stuff. And even we'll make sure to link Jim and Tommy's conversation last week, because even as parents, I think that's the tension too that we're navigating in this time, is where you are trying to help your family cope, but also you have to put on like the mask before they do, in order to help everybody else. You know, like whenever you're on an airplane, like you got to put the mask on, so that way then you can help your kids and then you can help your family. And so even one of the best things like to do in this season is to make sure you're taking care of you, which can feel hard or selfish. But self-care, I think there's a good quote that I've heard TD say, that self-care isn't selfish whenever like Christ is the center of it, whenever it's stewardship and taking care of like your person and like what God has given you and yourself. That's not selfish. That's being a good steward, which feels hard in this season for sure. Sweet. Well, I'd love to touch a little bit on the mental health stuff of how to help. And all these great principles that we're talking about are great practical ways to carry over into the mental health area. But I think that is a conversation and a topic that feels tricky and weighty, and is hard in normal times, and now could potentially feel impossible. Even as I've been navigating with some students' mental health in this season, it's like, man, how do I help them? What do I say? What are some good, whatever, practical things and stuff like that. So I'd love to just have a conversation of how to help your kids and students navigate mental health, anxiety, depression, some in this season. So I don't know, whoever wants to take that and start us off with that easy topic, it's fine.
I'm just waiting for advice here. I feel like this. Go ahead, Kayanna. Go ahead, start us off.
Well, let me say, then I don't know if I have. I deal a lot more with specific situations, so broad advice is going to be hard to give out. That's going to be helpful for everyone. And I think too, we all need to just recognize, like, we pointed out, we are not experts, but no one is an expert of this situation of life during COVID-19, so yeah, all those things, like Taylor was saying, blogs, books, all of it can be great resources. They can be very helpful, but they're not going to be specific to this situation and the circumstances that you're living in. And so all we can do really is surrender that to God and then do the best we can, right, with what He's given us. In terms of specifics, I've already heard a lot of really helpful things. I mean, what you were saying, Jen, in terms of how you help your kids deal with, I would assume, the anxiety of the times and even the sadness and depression that can come with it. Like, those are usually the big kind of words that I hear when we talk about mental health, right? Is how do I deal with that anxiety? And what do I do with this sadness? And it feels like sometimes this crippling kind of sadness that we would usually call depression, right? And so a big one, like, it doesn't matter big, little. I think, we have to start in terms of the airplane oxygen mask is my favorite analogy to use. It's just like beautiful. We have to take care of ourselves. And so, it's big. I have little kids, so this is always on my mind. You have to start with being calm yourself. So if they're, expressing some kind of anxiety, or whatever it is, you have to be in a place where they know that you're safe and that you can hear them. And that starts with kind of regulating and calming your own body. And so again, there are specific tools that I could give, but that'll take up days. So I'll put that on the resource thing. But then once you know that you're calm, that's huge, because anxiety is contagious. I think you said that, Jen. Like, when I know my kids are kind of in a place that I know, is hard for them. Yeah, especially as moms, but I think dads too. We're concerned for our kids. We worry about them. We want what's best for them. And that changes how we feel about whatever is going on, right? And so when we can recognize that if I'm anxious, I'm probably making my kid anxious, and vice versa, there's something that needs to happen there to kind of calm everybody down. And then the next thing is just be honest, I think, with the situation. Like, okay, like, if your kids are old enough to know that, they're feeling depressed, right? Like, they're having a hard time maybe getting out of bed or doing the things that they know that they should do. Like, be open to have an honest conversation with them about it. Like, don't, try to shove it under the rug or anything like that. Like, it's there. And so it needs to be looked at. And don't shame them for it. I think that's big, especially I had a conversation with someone recently in terms of the senior stuff. I saw a thing on the internet pop up about, what did it say? It said something like, oh, you know, seniors today are all sad and worried about not getting to have a prom and a graduation when seniors, however many years ago, had to go off to war. You're like, I mean, yeah, that sucks for them, but what a way to just really make everybody else feel super crappy, you know, like, so you have to validate where they're at and don't try to diminish whatever they're feeling. I think that's really big because that comparative grief that you were talking about, Jen, is huge. Like, we all carry these things. We all have feelings. We all have emotions, and they're a fact, right? It's not really good or bad. We just have to be honest that they're there and then figure out the steps that we need to take to deal with it. And I think that's where communication in families is huge. So whatever your family kind of unit looks like, if you haven't done it, setting aside time to do it soon, but just to have like a family meeting, right? Sit down and talk. How are we going to continue to get through this? What do you need? What, you know, let me talk about what I need, right? I think those things are huge in terms of, especially if you live in a small place, right? And we all need alone time. We need time to be able to, you know, connect to ourselves, to be quiet and calm. And if you live in a tiny environment, that's gonna be hard to do. So it might need to be like, okay, that's my chair. Like, if I'm sitting in the chair, you know, I need my quiet time right now. Like, that means don't talk to mom or don't talk to brother or whatever if they're in the chair, right? Whatever that needs to look like for you. But I think having those conversations are huge in terms of being able to even just start this process of dealing with emotions and whatever we're kind of walking through in terms of our mental health. You guys have anything?
Yeah, I love that you said setting a meeting. I think that is huge. Where so many times we get in the moment and want to fix something or have the conversation now. And I think sometimes as parents, it's like, you might be ready to have the conversation, but your kid or student maybe isn't. And so knowing that you both need to come in ready and giving them time to prep and get clear on why you want to do it. Like, we want to, like, this season sucks, but we want to thrive in it. We want to try to have, we want to make the best of it. We want to be healthy in this season. So let's talk about that. It's helpful to give them space and time to think about it and know that it's coming more than a moment. Be like, well, what the heck? You just stay in your room all the time. Like, what are you doing? Like, whatever is awesome. So I think that's great.
I had a friend once tell me that, very wise friend said that a healthy person knows what they need and knows how to ask for it. And so it's one of the things I've been trying to teach my kids is like, if I'm like, okay, if that's what a healthy person is, then I will teach my kids how to know what they need and how to ask for it, you know, because then they'll be healthy. But I don't know if it works like that. But that is so huge to recognize that, you know, there is that we all have this need. And so to be able to just create spaces where we can talk about it and help discover what it is, and then figure out how, like I love that chair analogy, Kayanna, because it's like, if it's something that could be something that simple, where I know when your door is shut, you're needing space and I'm not going to barge in, or whatever the thing is that that your kids feel like in this season. And it may change, and that's okay too, but to learn that muscle, to strengthen that muscle of like, oh, this is what I need and I know how to ask for it, I think is huge. Another thing I was thinking too, with all of the anxiety and depression, I think a lot of times there is like all or nothing thinking is tied up in that. So and it's, I have it. I'm so like, that's why it's a roller coaster. It's like, it's all amazing. This is the best thing ever that could have ever happened. Or I think that world is ending, you know, like it's one or the other. It's nothing in between. And so, learning, we talk a lot at even our staff team talks a lot about managing tension. Like, it's not one or the other, that sometimes that there's just a tension between both. So it is actually possible to be grateful and sad at the same time. Those are two things that can actually coexist. And that feels kind of weird, but like, even especially for like some of the grief stuff, that some of the stuff I'm sad about missing out, yes, I can also be grateful that I'm not, I guess, being sent to war or whatever, but also this is still another valid emotion that I'm feeling. I'm feeling them both at the same time. And that permission, I think sometimes we need permission that it's okay to like be managing the tension between them both, and that nothing is going to be all bad and nothing is going to be all good, that we kind of get to like recognize that we actually have a little bit of both here, and we can kind of navigate between the two. I think it can be helpful for me and my all or nothing thinkers in my house, to just be reminded that there's both going on at the same time.
I would even add that sometimes it can be more. So that's why I have things like this beautiful chart, because I think many of us haven't been taught just that, Jen, that it's oftentimes when we're feeling something, it's multiple things, right? And that often gets us to the place of we can't stop to recognize what they are, or give, like, identify, you know, oh, I'm feeling happy and a little bit sad and a little bit lonely and whatever. If we don't have the vocabulary for those things, it just leads us to that place of overwhelm, right? That's usually the word I'm just overwhelmed, I don't know what to do. And depending on kind of your personality or what you've learned, it can either be like shut down, or we get that kind of like volcano explosion down the line, right? And so I think that's a huge part of just being able to identify and give words to what the feelings are, which can be many. Like a lot of what I do is just sitting with people and having them identify like what they're feeling at a given moment or given a situation. And sometimes it's like 10 plus things, right? But not all of us have the words for 10 plus emotions. And so I think that's a huge thing, is just to be able to sit down and start practicing, like, also, okay, so what is this? Like, how do I break it down? And things like the chart that I showed are helpful because it's a visual example of like, okay, like that face really is showing, it looks enraged. Okay, oh, that's what embarrassed looks like, right? Because sometimes we don't connect the two, or even make it okay to have multiple feelings at a given time. Sorry, that's my...
I'd love to take a second to acknowledge what we've all been acknowledging, which is that it is okay for you parents to have all of those multiple feelings. And I think right now it's such a good analogy to put on your oxygen mask. But what if you feel like it's being ripped off your face? So that is literally like...
We need to have a talk with Tommy if he's ripping your oxygen mask off, let me tell you.
No, he is not. This is a beautiful thing about having a two-parent home, is that he can be my oxygen mask. He can take over with the kids. And so that's huge. If you're a single parent, I want to pray for you. I want to love you. I want to take your kids away from you for 5 hours at a time. Like, you are doing awesome. You can do this. The oxygen mask, a lot of us, our coping mechanisms are out the window, just like Jen was explaining. Like, my drive from place A to B with my kids in the car, I turn up the music really loud so they can't talk to me and I can drink my coffee. Well, that's not a part of my day anymore. We transition from one activity to another via them like climbing on me, you know, and I'm like, I wanted to drink my coffee. And so it's okay to not feel like your oxygen mask is on. I think something important that I'm learning to do is, when I can't really get a hold of myself, or I am having a really bad day, is to make it clear to my kids who have the language skills that, like, oh, I love them, and I am having a hard time today. And this is why kids are so narcissistic. Well, we all are, but kids especially. So they're just like inferring all of your negative emotions are their fault is really what they do. And so it can be so helpful when you are having those bad days. You're like, I just feel really sad, and I really miss my friends. I really miss Grandma and Grandpa right now. They used to take you away from me. You know, don't say that, but it's okay. It's good to acknowledge that, to be really creative and look at your day and say, especially for parenting little kids, and say like, okay, I need my heart rate up. I need, you know, these things that Kayanna was like talking about, how to calm yourself. Like, okay, that means dance party now. cranking up the music, and I am like, you guys, I had done this multiple times, so just like, so you know you're not alone. And I'm like, instead of screaming in your face, I am gonna punch the air, and I'm gonna rock out to this music and jump as hard as I can, and maybe we'll even start a pillow fight to get out some of my aggression in a healthy way, because this is real life and it's really hard. And so as a parent, if you're feeling like your oxygen mask is ripped off right now, like make it a real priority to get it back on in little ways and new ways and creative ways. And it's okay to admit to yourself and to your kids that you're not doing great.
That's great. I love that. I know, honestly, even dealing with helping kids or students or whoever process their emotions, sometimes I felt it for me in having a conversation with somebody and they're like, I'm just having another bad day, or I'm just still grieving. It can feel like, what? Get over it, get there quicker and stuff. And what I've come to learn is whenever I feel that, that's a red flag for me, that I am not slowing down, that I am not probably identifying my own emotions. So maybe that's not for you, I don't know. But for me, it's been, if I'm feeling mad or angry or upset that whoever is still feeling this way or still grieving the season or having another bad day, then there's something off in me, because I'm not wanting to help them. I'm wanting them to like move through it quicker. And so it's been like, I need to do some of what we talked about. I need to slow down. I need to take some self-care. I need to spend some time alone. That way I can put the oxygen mask back on and be in a good space, which is hard.
I love to bring up the idea that even if you have little kids, and you know, Kayanna was talking about problem solving with your own family and having this conversation. And you can actually have problem solving conversations with your little kids and kind of approach them with your needs and then approach them with their needs. Often they maybe can't articulate it that same way, but if you're really stuck in a rut right now, or you're able to identify, okay, I know they're so mad because they don't get one-on-one attention with me anymore, or I know that they're so mad because their brother or sister is in their space all the time, and honestly I see that their brother or sister is super annoying, so I would be too. Like sit down with them together and go through some problem solving, and start with that affirmation of like, you're feeling frustrated every time your brother walks in your room. Okay, I feel frustrated when you scream at your brother. Okay, those are the problems. Like, it's okay to feel angry. Like, oh, I feel so angry too. Sometimes I feel angry when daddy walks in the room and I'm alone. Like, I just want to be alone. And affirming that. And then, honestly, this works for 4-year-olds. So then we'll come up with solutions together. So I don't throw anything out the window. And I suggest that if you're doing this with a little kid, come up with the most outlandish, fanatical, unrealistic thing you can. Well, we could get rid of your brother. That's one solution. Or we could, or maybe we could make a crocodile moat around your room. That would really work. Oh, I guess California doesn't have enough water for that, And then, well,
I like that you had a solution like that. That's why you couldn't do a moat, but there's no like getting rid of your brother.
There's no solution.
Maybe that's an option. I don't know.
maybe it's an option. I don't know. I'm gonna keep myself from saying anything right now. You guys, it's real. Okay, so we're just throwing out solutions, okay, and we're looking at the problem of child needing space alone. Okay, so we're gonna kind of come up with them together, and like, okay, let's cross the ones off the list that we can't do. Bummer, can't do a moat. Bummer, can't get rid of brother. But okay, we could have like a special sign on your door. Oh, you want to make a sign that says this is my time? Okay, well, I need my alone time too. Maybe I could make a sign. Maybe we can make our signs together, and they say how long, you guys, if kids are involved in the the problem solving solution, it is really amazing how cooperative they become. And you can involve all your kids in one of these conversations. So you're writing down ideas, you're deciding which ones you like. So this isn't you saying like, yeah, so if you stay in your room, I'm going to give you 10 pieces of chocolate. Like, it's not that. It's like, oh, you really like that idea, and I really like that idea. Obviously, the parent signs off on the ideas. We can do this together, and let's try it. And working together, even with your 4-year-old, we have done this quite a few times during this quarantine season with my 4-year-old. And it's funny because when we sit down and I say, like, why do you cry all morning when it's daddy morning? Like, you love your daddy. And, you know, we've come to some interesting solutions. Well, daddy's not good at doing the routine. Like, oh, okay. And, you know, okay, yes, you don't like daddy doing the mommy routine. That's for mommy. Okay. And we've really come to some solutions to where, like, we were just like before, we're like, why are you so mad at daddy? And just like heightened emotions. And then now we have this little cool chart on our fridge. It's like, it's daddy morning, you're feeling sad. Let's go find the list of things you and daddy decided you would do together. And she, oh, okay, let's do it. So just to give you a little feeling of like control back in your belt, like you can really do this with young kids as well as older kids. And I would encourage you to try it. I start with affirming the emotions. It's really fun to come up with really silly ideas and go from there.
I think that is great, even with so many different situations and scenarios that every parent is trying to navigate with their kids and students. It's like problem solving it together is helpful whenever it comes to issues like screen time or other things that we don't really have time to touch on specifics for. Getting to have a conversation around it with each other to talk through some of that is great and is super helpful. And I just want to throw it out there that for parents, if you're looking for ways to continue this conversation, to get in some specifics, or even a helpful way to kind of put the oxygen mask back on for you. One helpful thing is we're going to have like a continuing the parents conversation, talking about parenting in a pandemic. And so you can sign up for that. We'll drop the link in the chat right now. And then it's also on that resource webpage. You click on the resource webpage. It's the first button you'll see right there. You can click on that and just sign up to continue this conversation, to get into maybe some more specific situations that you're dealing with, and to just have some people around you to maybe listen to the chaos that's going on and be like, oh my goodness, that sounds crazy. You're doing a great job. Because honestly, that's what I think a lot of us need right now in this season, is just to be able to have a space to talk through some of that.
Yeah, I think too, for those of us who aren't parents, who are pre-kids or grandparents or neighbors of people with kids and all those different things, like it's such an important season for us to be able to support the parents that we know, the parents that we're friends with, parents we're related to. So like, even just from what you guys were saying a little bit, like just something new can feel really, really special right now. So like if you have a neighbor who's a friend, get them like a little care package or like a thing of Play-Doh or whatever it is, and just like leave it on their doorstep. Or if you're a grandparent, whether you're close or far, like mail them a care package. Like all those things feel so special right now. Make the parent feel loved, give the kids something fresh to do that's really fun, and they feel loved as well. All of that is so important right now. So if you are not a parent, go find parents and love them a lot, because they need it. And so that is super awesome. Thank you guys so much for all of that. That was incredible. Just such a good mix of really practical things and some more like just heart stuff and things we can do for ourselves and ways we can help our kids. And just the mix of all of that was so incredible and encouraging it's going to be for so many people. So thank you guys. You're all amazing. Before we wrap here, I just want to make sure all of you watching know about what else we have for your family in this season. So for Mission Kids, we are pushing out a bunch of content every week. We have church at home every Sunday on our website that we will link in the resource page. And you can check out that. We also have church kits where we will deliver all of the materials for church at home to you, to your door.
I'm interrupting Becky because I got my church kit this last week, and I kind of wanted to cry because I was like, look at someone prepped all the crap for me. No one has prepped anything in 5 weeks, and it's all right here, and I just love it. So thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you said prepped all the crafts or all the crap, Lauren, but whatever. Either one works, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Yes, let us bring that to you. We want to make it easy for you. So you can sign up for that on the resource page. We also have a kids YouTube channel, and we've got Instagram for parents and all different stuff to support you and love you and encourage you in this time. So check all that out. Taylor, what do students have?
Yeah, for Mission students, we've got groups that are still meeting through Zoom. We've got a middle school live stream on YouTube that's happening on Thursday nights. And so that's been a ton of fun and a lot of craziness. And then we've got some like midweek hangouts happening on Zoom for middle school and high school, and doing some different challenges and things on Instagram and putting out YouTube videos and fun ways to just keep engaging students during the season. And all that will be on the resource page. So make sure you check that out to find out ways you can keep your student connected in this crazy season.
Awesome. Thanks so much for hanging with us tonight. We are just praying for you all, and we're here to support you and love you, and we're all in it together. So thanks, guys. See ya.